So, dzień dobry. Hello. It's great to see so many young people here. I'm Gerd Leonhard. I live in Zurich, Switzerland. I've been working on the future for about 20 years. And just in case you don't know what a futurist is, I think we should ask ChatGPT what a futurist is. So let me do that. You know, live demos are always a disaster, but we should keep trying. So, what does a futurist do? Give me one sentence.
A futurist explores and predicts future trends and possibilities in various fields to help people prepare for what's coming.
Predicts, that's already wrong right there. But the second word is already wrong. I'll explain in a second. But anyway, this is ChatGPT. You can ask it questions, you can upload images, you can do all that stuff on your mobile, and very soon you can do that without the internet too. So very soon you can do it without a mobile phone because you have a pin or a watch, and you can ask questions like, who should I marry? Or, who should I vote for? And we'll give you precise answers. The future is already here, we just haven't paid enough attention. And this is quite clear. When I worked on the future 20 years ago, I was looking at this and was saying, okay, the future is about tomorrow. But now it's quite obvious the future isn't about tomorrow. The future is here. I mean, it's mind-boggling, all the things that we see. We have robotic surgery in hospitals, telemedicine, 100 million songs now on Spotify. For 10 euros, that used to be 10 euros for like one CD. Mind-boggling changes, and that will impact everything around us, some good and some not so good. I'll talk about both, and I'll be available for questions later. Before I forget it, the reason I showed the demo is because I would like you guys to consider becoming a futurist. There's a great need for people who work on the future. In many ways, you could say the future is a new present, because when you work on the future, you're kind of working one step ahead of the obvious. And lots of companies will be hiring futurists to design their business models. Prediction, as the app said, this is of course the most common mistake. There is no such thing as prediction. I think Nostradamus, right, Alvin Toffler, Arthur C. Clarke, they could do some of that, but that was 50 years ago in the case of Alvin Toffler. Today, it's safe to say the future is coming at us at a mind-boggling speed. What I do is not prediction, it's observation. Just paying attention. I can't tell you how many of my clients are just not paying attention to what's happening. They don't listen to their kids or their wives, never mind the futurists, because they're so busy with the present. Right? It's really important that we are prepared for the future. So I want to start by the 3 revolutions that we can expect to happen. Okay, coming up here. It's a little bit confusing with the screen, so as you're watching my presentation, you will have to swivel around, as I go around, because I'm covering the whole screen. The screen isn't replicated, so just kind of follow the flow of things. We're going to publish the slides later. You can download it from the website later, because there's quite a few coming up. So, 3 revolutions. Big Blue, technology. Okay, this means basically everything around us is becoming technology. Media is becoming technology. Pharma medicine is becoming technology. Education, I would say, is crossing over with technology. Basically, technology means Big Blue. All the stuff that we see, quantum computing, 5G, this is only the beginning. In 2030, we'll have 10 billion people on the planet. 9 billion will be connected to the internet, twice as many as today. We will have instant language translation in something like 40 languages. So the next thing that WhatsApp will do, it will allow you to speak in Polish and come out in Chinese in real time. Okay. So all these things are happening around us. Big Blue is basically technology, not IBM, just technology. Big Green. The biggest shift in our lifetime for the last 100 years, we're going away from fossil fuels to renewables. And of course, nuclear fusion, next generation nuclear. We're going to solve the energy problem in basically 10 years. So this is a huge shift because every single product is impacted by this. And with sustainability, we're going to climate emergency. You have not seen anything yet, right? If you think it's emergency now, just give it 3 years. So we're going to have emergency regulation. You're going to have to pay a carbon tax to fly on the airplane. You pay a carbon tax to eat meat. All that stuff, it sounds crazy, right, when you think about it. Right? But we're going to solve that problem. It is actually solvable. That's a good thing about climate change. We can solve it. It takes action. The third revolution, big purple. Purple is the color of the chakra in India, the color of people. And this is about the purpose of life. And given that there's so many millennials and Gen X here, it's quite clear that my generation was primarily about one purpose, which is to live well, to grow, to generate profit. That's what we did. My generation is responsible for 50% of all the CO2 emissions that we have today. We actually created 50% of all the emissions that are out there in the last 25 years. The new generations, they're about this, you know for yourself, asking for purpose beyond money. Money is still important, right? I say people, planet, purpose, prosperity. That's also the motto of my work. And this is coming, and the stock markets are changing. Now, the richest companies in the world are the ones that do the most damage. Think about that logic. Right? Aramco, the Saudi Arabian oil company, it's the second richest. I think the richest now is actually Apple. Right? And Meta, Facebook, they do the same than Aramco, except that their oil is the data. Right? Same story. And it's also the richest companies make huge profits. The oil companies make $2 billion profit every single day. Basically ruining our world in return. It's kind of a bizarre justice here, because we're going to see that change. Stock markets are changing as a big result of all of these debates. So, going into the future, AI is a big topic now. Everybody's talking about AI. So I figured I would start with a very simple definition of AI. And this is from Demis Hassabis. Demis is one of the key figures in AI. He runs Google's efforts on AI. And he said it's basically, a definition would be computer systems that turn data and information into knowledge. Think about that for a second. Isn't that what you are doing at the university? Acquiring knowledge. Isn't that what humans are all about? Knowledge. Well, of course, I have news for you. Basically, a machine can have a certain kind of knowledge. Machine knowledge. Like a machine can memorize all of Wikipedia, it can read all the philosophers, but a machine like IBM Watson would take about 40 seconds to read all of the books of philosophy. And then you can ask questions to the machine, and it would put together an answer, like ChatGPT. But this answer is about mathematics. It's about patterns. The machine is not a philosopher. What is the difference? It knows everything, but understood nothing. Right? There's a vast difference. Okay? This machine is very useful if you want to look up things, but it will not tell you what you're supposed to understand. That's our job. Right? Very important to remember the difference. Now, machine knowledge is everywhere. Medical. Right? Now we can, for example, do what's called protein folding. We can do an experiment in the cloud where we fold proteins to avoid cancer, to actually figure out 1 trillion combinations until we find the right one that we couldn't do before. So this stuff is happening everywhere, and this is something we have to remember, this kind of knowledge definition. That's why if you're studying today, the key to the future is not more knowledge, more intelligence. Right? It's human knowledge, things that machines can't do. That's the key. The key is to go beyond knowledge. What's beyond knowledge? Well, clearly intuition, imagination, understanding, all the things that are not hardcore, basically science in the sense of logic. And this is, of course, an interesting part. We thought that people who study engineering, many of you probably do that, or computer science, right? They're safe for the future. Turns out, no. A machine is perfectly capable of writing code, of engineering, of building a bridge even. The machine is not capable of deciding if it's the right bridge, or if it has ethical issues that it occurs when it crosses a border, or something like that. Very important. So, moving to that future, we think about thinking machines. Let's make no mistake about this, these are not thinking machines. There is no such thing as a thinking machine, as IBM keeps saying, right? Or stopped saying, actually, lately. They think in the computer sense. How does a computer think? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, 0, 1. How does a human think? Maybe today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe you're lying, maybe I'm lying, maybe this is changing. You know, we are multilateral. You know, we think about different things at the same time. Machines can't do that very well. So when we look in this direction, clearly technology is exploding exponentially. Exponentially means not linear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, Wright's law, and so on. What that means today, we're sitting here, we're probably at level 4 on this curve. In 16 months, it's 8, 32, 64. So in 10 years, we are 256. In 10 years, our world will be 80 times as different as today. Can you imagine? I mean, if you're ever going to have kids, think about that for a second. Your kids will live in a world that's very likely to be 100,000 to 1,000,000 times as fast and as different as today. So, knowledge work, which is what we're doing mostly, is deeply impacted. Because first you have to ask a question, what kind of knowledge is important? And clearly, simple knowledge will still be important, but the computers can do it, like I showed you. Well, if you ask a simple question, you get a great answer. For example, if I ask ChatGPT how to fix my camera, how to connect my camera to my computer, I can get every possible answer and solve the problem. I cannot ask ChatGPT about philosophical problems. I get an answer, but it's useless. Right? So, education must reboot. Right now, education is about learning facts, parentheses, for later use. Downloading information. When I went to school, University of Bonn, I was a student of theology, philosophy, and a bunch of other stuff. And then I became a musician. I studied music in Berkeley, California, and then in Boston. You know, it was about learning the stuff. You know, as a musician, I had to learn all these scales and play everything and, you know, craft. Today, a computer can be a damn good musician. But David Byrne, the musician, said the other day, a computer can make good music, but it can never make great music. Right? And that's an interesting point. You know, today we have to learn something that machines can't do. So if you're going to school to memorize information for later, so you can help your client look at a business case from 14 years ago, you are in trouble. Because the client will be able to look up anything they want themselves. So it's an interesting point what happens with education here. And clearly, in this world where I have the first step is cognification, everything is becoming smart. There's data everywhere, data in your car, data on your mobile phone, data in the cloud, data about your apps and what you're doing, so everything is becoming smart. Then we have augmentation, where humans are being augmented, for example, with virtual reality, brain-computer interfaces, and of course mobile phones. And very soon, in 2030 roughly, we will be able to upload our brain to the internet. I mean, I don't know what the point would be, but I suppose you could. And people are arguing that this is a good thing. I think it's not a good thing, but basically augmentation will be everywhere. And this is already an augmentation. This is my second brain. And for some people, it's the first brain, when they don't have anything else they can be doing. And the last part, of course, is virtualization. Right now, with the new Apple thing, the Vision Pro, it's only 4,000 euros, so it's available to everyone. But anyway, it's a great tool, and really what it is, it's a television on your face. Right? I mean, the stuff you can watch is truly amazing, and it's going to be some time, but visualization and virtualization means we can go into virtual context, we can study remotely, we can dive into, like, you remember Tom Cruise Minority Report? We go inside the data and pull out the data and take a look. I mean, if you're a doctor, Amazing, right? A lawyer. Right? If you are the police and you want to take a look at who else was there, you just pull out the data, you click the button, off the person goes to jail. I mean, this is what happened in Israel now with the war that's happening down there. They use AI to target people. Right? It's the most bizarre use of this technology. I mean, it's basically everywhere now. So, AI, artificial intelligence, is the new general purpose technology. General purpose means be used for everything. So, printing press, fire, internet, the computer, the cell phone, those are general purpose technologies. Basically what that means is since ChatGPT kind of brought the Sputnik moment, the birth of AI, right? Now we have this moment where that's basically becoming a part of everything. And technology companies, I work for a lot of technology companies, they love this because AI is the saving grace for technology. All of a sudden, technology is hip again. And of course, making lots of money. So technology is booming. They are the most powerful companies in the world. The biggest shift for us is, especially if you're just getting started on this, we're no longer going to be on the graphic user interface, which is the browser or apps, typing. Think about that for a second. That's a very unnatural way for humans. I mean, you don't type to send a message to your husband or something. Well, you could, but usually you just speak, right? Now, we can communicate with computers by speaking. Like I showed you, but this is getting much better. So in most mainstream languages, not Swiss, German, or Finnish, but most languages, this will work. And the computer will speak to you in the voice of, say, Elton John, if you want, right? Whatever. But it's possible to communicate with a computer like a person. That natural user interface. And that will make a vast difference because now we're talking computers like this.
Where can I find a gift for my wife before I have to leave tomorrow?
Vancouver's Granville Island is a lively shopping district.
That's an incredibly simple response for a very complex query.
Humane, the startup founded.
So there's an app called Humane, was supposed to be out in March. Of course, it didn't come out because it's very complicated. Probably won't come out for some time, but this is the idea. You have a pin. The pin is like in the movie Her. You've seen the movie Her, right? It's your digital assistant, okay? And you can use it for business, for travel, or for dating, or whatever you like. And this will change everything because the interface is different. And then the question is, who controls this? Who says if the answer is correct or not? And who is in charge? And who knows what you're saying? All these things are kind of up there, but basically generative and conversational AI are coming, and the definition of that, I put it here again, is computer systems that turn data and information into content. Now think about this for a second. If you're writing blog posts, you're writing newspaper articles, you have an application that writes for you. All you say, write something today about how bad Gerd's speech was, okay? And it will just generate it based on whatever else it's finding, and you can say publish, right? You can publish every 14 seconds, right? That's called bot shit, right? It's basically a bot that publishes. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, you can publish every 4 seconds using a bot. Right? Is that a good thing? I doubt it. Right? And how do we know what's real? I mean, you can take my voice right now with the recorder here. You go to 11 Labs, you upload the voice there, and you can generate a video or a podcast with my voice. Okay? I mean, that's how we get to fake news and things like that. Right? So, interesting point, what's happening here is that, great example. This is a video that was big on TikTok last week. There's generative AI using famous people, and the theme is, it's Friday, stop working, start drinking. Well, it's not Friday today, so I'm sorry about that. But, right, so a pretty good job. This was completely automated. There was no graphic designer, no video designer. This was done with an AI. Right? You may have seen it or not. Oh, who is she? Yeah, okay, I remember her. Yeah. Some time ago. I use AI to make pictures of my presentations. So this is Cape Town in the future, where I use DALL-E from ChatGPT. The thing about this is very cool when you do it once. When you do it 50 times, it's all the same. right? So it's a little bit like, yeah, it's nice, not revolutionary. I use AI to translate my videos. So I have about 300K people following me or subscribing on YouTube, but many of them speak Spanish or German or Portuguese, and I was never able to figure out how I'm going to get the German stuff on there because I speak mostly in English. Right? And now there's an app called Rask that does a pretty good job translating.
En estos días, mucha gente a mi alrededor dice que el buen futuro no existe, incluyendo a mis propios hijos.
Using my voice.
Cuando hablo del buen futuro, dicen, ¿no te has dado cuenta de COVID?
So I give it the English, and it makes Spanish. And if you speak Spanish, you can say, yeah, that's not perfect, right? But it works pretty well. Microsoft does the same thing with the Copilot. Many of you may have used this. Amazing stuff. The Copilot allows you to basically bring up your performance inside the company and automate things and all kinds of. It's pretty mind-boggling. Copilot was just banned in America in the White House because it divulged information on the network. So there are many issues with this. But, you know, Copilot is available, I think, to pretty much anybody who has Windows. So what's happening here is really quite clear. The key question will be about trust. How do we know it's real? How do you know you are you? How do you know you're actually writing? I mean, think about politics. You know, this is the year of elections, 72 elections in the world. You know, if I can publish stuff pretending to be somebody else, that's kind of like making fake money, you know. So if you make fake money, you go to jail for a long time. But if you make a fake video, you get famous on TikTok. You know? It's kind of a strange thing. Right? So we have all these problems with these technologies, like it's about speed, not depth. It's statistics, not causality. It doesn't understand the context. It's biased. Right? It has coherence, but no truth. We don't really know what truth is, a big story here, right? So this is a real problem with AI, because now we're getting to the point to where AI is becoming a bit of a black box. We use it, but we don't know how we got there. Imagine if your doctor is using AI and scans your skin and your DNA, right? And he says to you, you're going to have leukemia when you're 35. And you say, that's the black box. You don't know why or how, but it changes your life just thinking about that. I mean, this will be a very strange thing. Of course, anybody could say that to you, but this system allegedly is perfect, right? So we believe it. This is a picture of the Pope. You know the Pope isn't a black person, right? Not yet. But this is generated from Gemini, Google Gemini. And Google tried to be very accurate and what's called woke, right? So racially correct. And this is the result of the algorithm overcorrecting and saying we shouldn't have that many white people, so you made the Pope black. Right? So this is kind of stuff that happens. On the left, you see the monkey, very famous from Sora. Sora is an app from OpenAI. Okay, this was generated with a prompt to make a video about a monkey playing chess. Okay, it's a really nice video. There's only one problem, you can't see it because people are sitting in front of it. But basically, this chessboard has 3 kings and only 7 fields. Okay? So it made a perfect video, but 3 kings and 7 fields, that's not how you play chess, right? So it's pretty cool, but it's pretty far away from reality. It's just not quite there yet. Right? So the bottom line for artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT and others, is frequently wrong, but never in doubt. That could be a bit of a problem. Right? So in my videos that the app is translating, I don't really care if the word is wrong, as long as it's not badly wrong. People have a laugh, right? They move on. NATO air traffic control, frequently wrong? No. Right? Medical applications, legal applications, it has to be always right. So we have to keep the human in the loop. So don't expect artificial intelligence to be a miracle machine. There's no such thing. It's a power tool. It's just like a power tool, like if you use blockchain or Bitcoin or mobile money or digital wallet or any of those things, but in a larger way. So important here to understand as we talk about trust. You know, trust is what keeps societies together. This chart shows you that in the last 10 years, it's from Edelman, it shows you, for example, that if you ask the question, most people can be trusted, yes or no, a lot more people are answering that people can't be trusted. The white spots are the ones where people have answered that people can't be trusted. Brazil, only 7% of Brazilians trust other Brazilians. And you know what is the result of this? If you look at Europe, you know, Switzerland, where I live, or Germany, but France or Spain have low trust levels. The result of that is politics. If you don't trust other people, you want to keep them out. You want to stay by yourself and keep safe. Right? Of course, the ultimate spot irony is that America actually trusts people, but the politics are the opposite. And then we get to this chart. This is the worst chart, really, of my entire presentation. You can see that democracy is on the decline. The red bar is people living in closed autocracies. It's increasing. And why is that? I have a theory. It's called social media. When you're on social media, you hear bad things. You hear things that are completely wrong. You know, the reason that we have Brexit is primarily social media. There was a whole theory about Turkey joining the European countries. And then basically there was a campaign, somebody cooked up a very expensive campaign to say if England stays in the Union, then all the Turkish people will come to England. I don't know what that means even, but you know, it was enough to have people not vote for the European Union. So, basically, fear and mistrusting the future will kill us. If we fear the future, we act like we fear the future. We create a future that we should fear. Right? It's called self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think that you can't trust these people and those people and all that stuff because that has been generated through your news feed. 50% of people around the world get their news through social media. That news is made by an app, by AI. There's no curator, there's no truth, it's basically just whatever you click most. Right? That's not a good thing. So if we want to educate people, you know, we have to educate people to have their own sense-making, to not get too lazy and constantly use apps to find out a fake truth. That's going to be an important thing, because in the end, technology can be a present, but if we use it wrong, it becomes a bomb. Facebook, Meta, and other social media sites, they have become toxic, right? Poison, literally poison. Right? I stopped using Facebook 5 years ago. I stopped speaking for Facebook at events because of this effect. But nevertheless, they're making lots of money, so people are happy with Facebook still. So it seems like a kind of a contradiction. Let's talk about humans and machines. The most important realization here when I was preparing is that machine intelligence, can't even call it that, let's say machine smartness, is not the same than real-world intelligence. Elon Musk said so himself about self-driving cars just a couple of weeks ago, that basically in order to have really intelligent machines, we must get them to live in the real world. Right now, machines don't live in the real world, they live in the computer world, in the data world. So, important to remember here that we have this pyramid. Now, the pyramid of work and knowledge. And a lot of traditional education was at the bottom of the pyramid. Data, information, intellectual knowledge. And that is now under fire. Right? So basically what's happening now is that computers can do this just fine. Right? Computers have intellectual knowledge, logic. And with artificial intelligence, we can expect a computer that has the capacity of all human brains combined by 2030. A computer with a theoretical IQ of 1 trillion. Right? Basically knows everything about everyone all the time. Is that exciting, or is it, well, it depends, right? Because this is what's happening for us. We're going to move up this pyramid. This is why you go to college. This is why you go to university. This is why you study other things, because you want deeper knowledge, tacit knowledge, quiet knowledge. You want understanding, wisdom, purpose, consciousness, humanity, spirituality, whatever you call it. You want all that weird stuff that the computers don't do. I tell you one thing, if you're spending all your time studying on the left to study what machines can do, you will never have a job. Or you're going to end up working for the robot. Because basically that's where things are going. Anything that the machine can learn, any routine that does not require being human, the machine will learn. Right now, language translation, if I speak in this box here and I say anything in German, just a couple of words, it will just crash, not do anything. Because it doesn't understand mixed things. You have to keep it very simple. In 2 or 3 years, problem solved. It's really, really powerful what's happening here. So let's remember, machines don't think. They don't have hunches. They don't have intuition. They don't have imagination. And they certainly don't care. This is our job. If you go into business, you realize that most people buy things from you or become customers because you understand them. Understand does not mean reading the email. Right? Understand person to person. It's super important to understand where this is going, because basically for studying at a university or anywhere, it's not going to be the formula of studying science, technology, engineering, STEM or MINT, what's called in German. STEM means we're studying technology so that we can make technology. And that was the formula. Now it turns out, no, machines can do that. Now we have to study both technology and what I call HECI in my book, humanity, ethics, creativity, imagination. We have to bring back the humanities. Sports, music, literature, understanding, talking to each other. In Finland, which I'll show an example later, this is part of the curriculum. Ethics, understanding global population. It's not like a separate thing. It's all part of the same thing. So very important that we understand where that's going as we're moving into a world where that's becoming more important. So it could very well be in the future that your job in the company is to be on top of many, many machines doing simple things, and other people who work with those machines based on those kind of skills. It is never wrong to have a technology skill, but it will not save the day. Basically, for example, in India, you have 1 million engineers graduate every year. Many of them will end up working for $300 a month, building bridges or highways. Right? You don't think a machine can do that job? Right? Not all of it. A machine can build a bridge, a machine can do the engineering, a machine can calculate as long as it gets the data. And then the robot makes the bridge or the 3D printer. 1 million a year. So, the two poles, digital intelligence over there, and human intelligence over there. Human intelligence, as you know from research, is hard to define, but has at least 8 different pieces. Kinesthetic intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence. Computers have one intelligence, and that is intellectual, parenthesis, right? Logic. And in that, they will be basically limitless. This is something to remember. Limitless intelligence can be very powerful and very dangerous. We know in history of a lot of super intelligent people who started every war we can imagine. This is part of the consequence of being too intelligent, I suppose. But so we're moving into this future where it's quite clear there's explicit knowledge, that is machines, and then there's tacit knowledge, the red bar. Right? Tacit knowledge means, for example, subjective, cognitive, non-codified information, which makes up about 95% of human lives. That means non-codified means it's not clear if it's 0 or 1. It could change. It needs interpretation. While explicit knowledge is objective and logical and technical. So basically, machines will take over this territory, easily transferable. It can be recorded. Can a computer be a scientist? Well, not in the traditional definition of a scientist, right? But yes, we could have an AI scientist in a new definition. Of course, there wouldn't be anything thinking about anything else than this. So be very limited scientists, but still, right? Computer can drive a car, even though we don't really have a lot of self-driving cars. But so we see where this is going. I mean, it's going to be a world where we have to think more about what I call IA, intelligent assistance. And I encourage you to look in this direction, because intelligent assistance means these are power tools that make us faster and better and more informed and more competitive and maybe more human even. Intelligent assistance. I mean, this is basically what all technology does. But I think it's a better word than AI because it's not as confusing. There is, however, a progression that you see in technology. We're going from the simple application of intelligent assistance to AI, which is a little bit more widely intelligent, and then to AGI, artificial general intelligence. AGI means a computer that would substitute humans in all of applicable tasks, all of them. And that's what OpenAI is building. That's what Microsoft is doing with OpenAI. I think that's a very bad idea, because an artificial general intelligence will have to be somewhat conscious to make those decisions. Probably not a good idea for us when we think about that. We want to be conscious. When we think about the definition of intelligence, the ability to solve problems. That's intelligence. Machines will be able to do some of that problem solving. When we think about the flip side of this, consciousness is the ability to feel things. They are not that much related. Just because you're more intelligent doesn't mean you're conscious, or vice versa. The ability to feel things. And this is so important in education. We need to go back to this. We need to stop saying that we need to be more intelligent, faster, and know more stuff, and have 5 PhDs and to have a job. No. I think that's true for some people, obviously. Right? But to be able to feel things, to understand things. Look at this slide. On the left is a computer. That's what a computer does best. This is what we do. When you put your hands into water, you're smelling, you're tasting, you're feeling. You know, it's a complex world. Computer doesn't have that. So it's very important to think, as Polanyi, the famous philosopher, said, we know more than we can tell. That's what you want to get to. So somebody would hire you and say, this person can add value beyond information. Otherwise, I get a robot. Right? And believe me, you know, when I say this, I think a lot of companies will hire robots to do simple knowledge work. Banking, insurance, because the robots will be able to do a cheap job. They don't have humans. They don't have unions. Right? They don't have strikes. You know, an AI can fly an airplane today. The reason that we don't see airplanes without pilots is not because airplanes can't do it. It's because it's only 1 or 2 pilots. And we need them for other things. So we keep them, and people don't feel good about not having a pilot. But in principle, this thing can fly by itself. There's other reasons that we have the humans. So we know more than we can tell. Marshall McLuhan's 1976 says, education must shift from instruction to discovery. And that is just so true. I think Poland is a lot like Germany, where I went to school and university. It's mostly about instruction, you know, downloading stuff. This will not work, because instruction will be endless, and you can instruct the computer to beat you very easily by having a voice command. So all the stuff you've ever learned that you kept for later can be instantly summoned from a machine. That's a very bad plan. We need to think about discovery. Bring back discovery. That's what good science is all about. That's the key word of the future, discovery. Because discovery is about creativity, about imagination, about foresight, about insight, about storytelling. Discovery. Now that's what you want people to understand when they come into work for, to discover things that are possible, to ask questions, and to actually be alive rather than to be a program. So in technology, we have all these things like virtualization and all these things I talked about earlier, cognification and augmentation, potentially automation, virtualization, and so on. But really what's happening here right, is that we are surrounded by technology. You probably get that feeling quite a bit, right? I call this the Neo-Luvian man and woman. I do have a woman version of it, but somehow it ends up being a man. But anyway, we are surrounded by technology. And that's not going to change. You can go anywhere in the world, that is not going to change. We are surrounded by technology. We don't really have a choice to say no. Right? We can say no to some of it, like Facebook and others, but the other thing that's happening in parallel is that all of these things that are called the androrhythms, the human things, becoming more important by the minute. Imagination, ethics, creativity. That is because these things are things that machines can do, so they become very cheap, commodity, right? And these things are becoming very expensive. So it's important that we realize this. We should focus education on this: critical thinking, foresight, imagination, questions, optimism, courage. The future doesn't belong to pessimists, it belongs to optimists. Have you ever seen a pessimist that has invented anything? You know, you talk to people about the future saying, no, that's not possible. In America, 12% of people that go from college start their new company. In Europe, 2%. It's no wonder that we buy everything from the Americans or the Chinese. Because we don't invent anything. Right? We don't ask questions. We got to get some courage to fix that. Very important. So what's happening here with work, jobs, and education is obvious that anything that's a routine, machines will be doing. Okay? So the future of work is not that we're going to lose our jobs. We're going to lose our routines, our tasks. So that means basically if your job is 90% routine, like a call center, your job is gone, sooner or later. If your job is 60% routine, you can probably figure out new things to do on top of the 60% that go away. You can create new jobs. It's a real problem in big countries like India, Brazil, where people do commodity work, you know, simple work. This slide shows you, this is from Goldman Sachs, how much percentage of jobs could be automated. 46% in office, 44% in legal, 44% of the job could be automated in legal. For example, reviewing documents, writing non-disclosure agreements. Is that true? Well, I say that's probably a bit over-optimistic. You know, I would halve the numbers, and that's still a big deal. Because think back, you know, when we had this discussion 10 years ago, self-driving cars. Do you see any self-driving cars in Warsaw? Do you see any in Zurich, where I live? You see them in Phoenix, Arizona, and San Francisco, but that's over now, I think. Right? That's because in theory it should work, but in reality it's very difficult to automate. So what we have now is cars that can park themselves and cars where you can, in a traffic jam, that drive themselves. This is Elon Musk talking about his vision.
Thanks in part to this guy.
Tesla car next year will probably be 90% capable of autopilot. You know, for sure, highway. We're probably only a month away from having autonomous driving, at least for highways, like a Model S and Model X can drive autonomously with greater safety than a person. Right now, safer than a person. By the end of next year. Autonomous robotaxis for Tesla next year. And releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
Yeah, you get the point, right? So it looks like it's very close that we're going to automate the lawyer and not have a lawyer. That's not going to happen anytime soon. We're going to automate little pieces of what the lawyer does, like research, comparison, fact-checking. And so the lawyer can have more time for other things or work less. The future could be, finally, that we only work 3 days a week and 5 hours, but get paid the same. Because technology can do most of the heavy work. That would, of course, depend on if our employer allows us to get paid the same, right? So those are big questions, social, cultural, political questions. I'll skip this one because we need to move ahead with the other things. So the most important thing for you guys, this. If you use AI and other technology, you can eventually be between 3 to 5 times as efficient. You see this pyramid here by 2030? So basically, if we do this right, we could work 3 or 4 or 5 times as fast. This could be heaven or it could be hell. It could be heaven if we say, okay, great, I work that fast, I'm only going to work 1/3 of the time. Or it could be hell if our employer says, you keep working and I fire the other 5 people because you work so fast, right? So I don't know, that's kind of a hard thing to say which way that's going. In many ways, I made this picture also with DALL-E. It could be the end of monkey work. You know? Of course, that's not a very good word to use, but monkey work is commodity work, hence the monkeys. Right? So I asked ChatGPT to talk about the end of monkey work, and it made this funny slide. But basically, it could be that all of the work that's commodity, you know, checking and organizing and scheduling and checking your income and, you know, all this translation, that could eventually be done by a machine. I think that's a good thing. If your job is 100% monkey work, you either are a monkey or sooner or later you lose that job, like call centers. So 21 million people work in call centers, many here in Poland. Right? They're going to be automated. That's just a question of time. That's already happening. So yes, that makes a difference, but you know, not everybody works in the call center. So there's a natural permutation. Keep in mind that in Poland and other countries around the world, 100 years ago, 90 people were working in agriculture. 90% people. And today, 2%. So, you know, we shifted into new things. That's entirely possible. We're moving into a world where this kind of automation is a threat. You know, we may see the robots moving in and the people moving out. And some people say what's going to happen is that we're going to become useless humans because the robots are coming in. To which I would say, yes, but if you are already useless at work, parenthesis, the robots will discover that. If pieces of your work are kind of routine that you're selling for a high price, the robots will take that over. But it doesn't mean that we in ourselves are going to become useless. It means that we have more tools. And this is really true for all tools. But what it also means is for people who do very low-level work, they will have an issue. Right? When we have to capture them and we have to think of social plans, you know, we need to make sure that in this pyramid here on the left, it basically says that every major technology innovation resulted in new jobs growing entirely from zero. For example, social media, I don't know if you are familiar with the work in social media. 22 million people work in social media. That job did not exist 15 years ago. Now today you have hundreds of thousands of professional TikTok creators and marketers and God knows what. All these are new jobs that didn't exist before. So we just need to make sure that we work on this kind of equality issue, that we give access to technology. You know, this is, of course, a major concern. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I only have a few minutes left. So this is a big theme, right? Technology, much of technology is too much of a good thing. You know, too much of a good thing is smoking, alcohol, cigarettes, food. You know, 400 million people are obese. More people die from obesity, from being fat, than from hunger. Right? That's too much of a good thing. Now, that's also true for technology. When we have too much technology, like here, we have assisted intelligence, we have automation, we have augmented intelligence. Do we really want autonomous intelligence? Machines that can do their own thinking? That are aware? I would argue that's a bad idea. I would argue that we should control that, supervise it, regulate it to some degree. Because great technology is great, but when it becomes too big, it becomes a jail. Like, you know this from Instagram, I'm sure. You know, if you're an Instagram user, it kind of tends to hook you into the process of constantly photographing your food. That's called toxic, right? Gets you into a dependency. So, too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing, and we have to keep a good eye on this when we talk about technology. I'll skip this as well. The curve on the left shows you what's happening today. We're investing literally hundreds of billions of dollars into artificial intelligence to make it more capable. Are we investing any real money in making it more aligned, right, with what we need? None, basically none. Europe is the only place in the world where we have an AI Act that stipulates what is supposed to be happening. I think US has that now too, with the White House directive and a few other places. So really interesting to see how education fits in there. This is an illustration of alignment, which I'll skip as well. Sorry about that. I want to get to the next important part, and that is this. Technology alone will not be our future. It will not save us. It won't save climate change. It won't save us against war. Technology is a tool. Technology has no intention by itself. It does whatever is part of the efficiency program of technology. This guy, Marc Andreessen, the most famous investor in Silicon Valley, he wrote a manifesto about the future of technology called the Optimist Manifesto. And his main message is we should leave technology alone, just take the benefits and shut up about the problems. That's his, in a nutshell. This is what he said last week. No material problem, including those caused by technology, cannot be solved by technology. So let me ask you if you believe this, right? That every problem can be solved by technology. I would say that's quite obvious. Yeah. Maybe if you live in Silicon Valley, I don't know. Everything is a technology problem. So the best thing would be to get rid of the humans and have technology run the government, right? So we can have an AI president because it would be smarter than the human and wouldn't have any scandals or any issues. Right? So that becomes a real problem. It becomes a false promise. The promise of technology to solve our lives. Technology makes things efficient. It makes it faster. It makes it more possible. It does all kinds of things, but it does not fix our lives. Technology fixes practical things. Water, food, disease, money. It does not solve a war, social issues, climate justice. That's something we have to do ourselves. So they believe in technology fixing everything as a problem. I think we should have technology companies take an oath. Right? I call this the technocratic oath. They should take an oath that says, I will place human decency and flourishing over anything else. That would be a good thing to have for artificial intelligence. Let me wrap up by saying, okay, I'm worried that a company like OpenAI becomes the next Tyrell Corporation. If you're old enough, you remember the first Blade Runner, 1982, where the Tyrell Corporation made the replicants. Remember that? You may recall that. It's the company that made the machines, the human machines, basically. And now OpenAI, the company, is the #1 company in the world that generates AI. The boss of OpenAI, Sam Altman, he said the other day, this is the next step for his company to create the ability to think, create, and understand and reason for machines. Okay. I think that's a very bad idea. I want the AI to be competent, to get the job done, to drive my car, to fly the airplane, to solve climate change, to help me invent things. I don't want the machine to reason. That's our job. Because how can you trust the machine to reason? It doesn't exist. It doesn't know what's important. You can talk to a machine about love, like you see in Her, the movie Her. But you remember how the movie Her ends, if you've seen the movie with Joaquin Phoenix, right? How does it end? In the end, he asks the machine, how many other lovers do you have at this moment? Because the machine is quite capable. And she says, 3,456 other lovers. Right? I mean, that's only machines can do those kind of things. So, bottom line is, right, we need to think about this and say purely intelligent creatures, whether machines or humans, are a detriment. We have to move beyond intelligence. We have to move beyond this idea of just logic. And now we have, everywhere in the news, you see all the money that's going into artificial intelligence. The Saudis are pouring like, I don't know, 400 billion into artificial intelligence. And, this can be both good and bad, but I think this whole idea of creating a super intelligent machine, I think that's way out of line and probably not a good idea. We have, of course, in Europe already efforts to change this. The CEO of Apple said the other day, technology can make great things, do great things, but it does not want to do great things. It doesn't want anything. Keep that in mind. Technology is a tool. It's not God. It's not the purpose. It's not whatever other facts you have in mind. That's why we need, for example, the Artificial Intelligence Act. As wrong as some of it may be, ultimately, we need to think about orchestrating this. And we need to think about what I call the International Artificial Intelligence Agency, which the UN has proposed to create an agency to take care of artificial intelligence. So I'm going to really wrap up now. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit so that we don't blow the program out of the water here. So one important saying from Malawi. Okay. People look at education like this. It's all about your brain. That is not the future. It never was. Saying from Malawi is knowledge without wisdom is like water in the sand. A machine that has infinite knowledge, but has no wisdom, no understanding, no comprehension of real life, just pours the knowledge into the sand. Doesn't change anything. Right? It's important for us to remember what we do. We go much beyond this. I'm going to skip this as well. Sorry about that, because time is up. So what now? Buckminster Fuller said, we are to be architects of the future, not its victims. If here in Poland, I very much believe that Poland is one of the most important countries in Europe. And I've been coming here for years and watching the transition. Right? If you want to do something, you have to be an architect of the future, not wait for somebody else to come along. And this is something we've done in Europe for a long time. We just waited for the Americans. That's why everything that we put on the cloud in information ends up in Silicon Valley, because that's where all the information goes. Let's not act like the turtle. I don't have any control over that, or I can't do anything about it. And many people, when I speak somewhere, they say, you know what, the doors of humanity are closing. There's wars, there's climate change, there's AI, there's bad actors. So 20 years, we're finished. Right? I think it's the other way around. I think the doors are opening. This is why it's so painful. Because now we're finding out we can solve climate change, we can solve food, we can solve energy. Solving war, that's more complicated, right? But we can solve so many practical things with science and technology. The doors aren't closing, they are opening. We're starting something completely new. That's basically a new process in time that allows us to become more proactive. So, the future is no longer about tomorrow. As a futurist, you're working today because you're bringing what people haven't seen into the limelight, and into the spotlight. The future is made by optimists. We should not be naive and just ignore problems, but as Kevin Kelly said, famous futurist from Wired magazine, we should be optimistic not because we have less problems, but because we have more capacity. We have the capacity to solve. And finally, the mindset contains your future. If you have a negative mindset, you create a negative future. And this is also important to remember when you're thinking about education, which way we're going. So if we're looking at this and saying, okay, what future do we want? We don't want this future, which means productivity and money going up because of AI, but humanity and what we are declining, which means top 10% will make more money than ever before. Everybody else gets to, wait around for his job to end. That's a bad idea, right? Because you know what results from this? War. And this will be a very bad solution. What we want is we want AI to bring us a solution like this, where productivity goes up and humanity goes up, where we all have benefits, where we all participate. And we need laws to help us with this. We need to think about what we want from this revolution that I mentioned in the beginning. Right? AI is about competence, not consciousness. It's about fixing practical problems. Getting smarter, no longer being stupid, getting stuff done. Right? And then it's about switching this sort of paradigm, this deadly paradigm that we've had for a long time that was primarily about profit and growth, to switch this to a larger story, the purple that I talked about earlier. So, summing up with AI, AI is a power tool. Okay? And people with power tools beat the people without power tools. Okay? Simple as that. If you work on construction, you have a hammer and you have to put nails in there, that's good. But if you have a nail gun, you know, a nail gun, you could be 100 times as fast. But the nail gun is also dangerous. You can shoot your foot, right? Kill somebody with a nail gun. Right? We need to use power tools to understand the world. But, you know, the world isn't just about tools, it's also about this idea of saying, well, that's kind of cool, but it's not enough. It's about telos, about wisdom. This is the #1 skill you need to get a good job in the future. Understanding, purpose, telos, wisdom. Right? Greek word for wisdom. So very, very important to go in that direction and bring it all together in education as we look at what I call the good future. 3 rules for the good future. On the left is technology. Exponential, convergent, combinatorial. Basically, by 2030, we'll be at 256, and we'll be in this room with, you know, basically virtual connections and holograms and what have you. I've already tried holograms, it's pretty cool. But the other part of this is, of course, the 3 other things of technology, the flip sides. Right? So that's being holistic, circular economy, human values. And when I say human, I don't just mean humans, I mean planetary values, not just people. So those 3 things are coming together and they're creating the future. I think the recipe for education is awesome humans. It's a great American word. I don't know how you would even translate that into German. But awesome humans on top of amazing technology. We can have amazing technology, but not awesome humans. We can create a world that is only 5% of people will participate. Right? So we don't really have much of a choice in saying we have to actually become awesome humans or remain awesome humans and discover what that means in education. What we focus on in the past is to create awesome functionaries. You know, people who function. But now machines are functioning, so we got to think a little bit different and move into the new reality. Let's not think about it like this, you know, with this sort of division of the bad future and the good future. Let's go a little bit further than this. Great saying from the Cherokee Indians, the wolf you feed is the wolf that wins. If you feed education or don't feed education and not help people to make that transition, you will get this result. Right? So we have to put our money in the right places. We have to, what I call, endow the good future. So we have to put money into education that does this. I think we should put the same amount of money into education and thinking and learning than we put into technology itself. That's how we would really get the economy going in the long run. To shift that money over, endow the future. So, that's it for today. I know that was a lot of information, so I'm going to repackage all these fancy slides into a 5,000-page PDF. And then we'll be sharing this. We're going to make the video available on my YouTube channel. I would like you to take a look at my book, Technology versus Humanity. It's not available in Polish, I think, but 14 languages. So if you speak Arabic, you can read it in Arabic too. I have one free copy if you want one. Just come up afterwards. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.